Again, what would a Met Ed conference be without a Tony Award winner on the docket? Today, that position of honor goes to a person whose set design for Rigoletto marks, as Dr. Kamala Schelling just told us, his 14th opera at the Met. 14 operas at the Met. That's not even counting all the other amazing things this person has done in the world. He also designed the Barber of Seville. Now, according to his bio on the Yale University website, where he is a teacher of scenic design, again, how fancy, very fancy. This person designed his first opera in 1970. It was La Boheme. So now, more than half a century after his first foray into opera, I'm so excited that I get to talk to him about his unbelievably amazing career in the world's greatest opera houses and beyond. Please join me in giving some Zoom love to Met and Broadway scenic designer Michael Yeargan. Michael, if you're in the house, reveal yourself. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Michael Yeargan. I think, there you go. There, you're unmuted.
Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you. I'm Susan Blackwell.
Nice.
Listen, if we were going to design a Zoom backdrop of like a great designer's Zoom backdrop, yours would be it by design. It's beautiful.
Well,
it's
thanks.
beautiful.
I'm in my studio in my house, which is in Milford, Connecticut, right outside of New Haven, where I teach.
Beautiful.
And it's a really dreary day, but I've been looking forward to this. It's a day off from rehearsal, so that's for me. So that's it's very handy.
We are really, really excited to have you here. If you would care to, would you like to share your pronouns or a visual description of yourself?
Sure. I'm Michael Yeargan. I'm a set designer, first and foremost, 24/7. And my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a white male with white hair. I'm wearing a red sweater and a blue and white shirt. And I teach set design at we changed the name of it because David Geffen has generously underwritten all the tuition for all of the students. It was the Yale School of Drama. It is now the David Geffen School of Design at Yale. And
wow.
I'm happy to share that with you because if you ever want to come, it's free. And behind me,
I don't know if I'll make the cut, but I appreciate the invitation.
You do have to do that part. But behind me are windows that look out on Long Island Sound. And I've lived here for 25 years and I love this place. And I love what I do. And I can't believe that it's really been 14 years, 14 shows.
14 shows.
I never had really tried not to count them, but now I know, I guess. So.
We've been counting them for you, Michael Yeargan. Michael, whether you like it or not, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I must kick it off with a game I like to play called 60-Second Life Story. I'm going to put 60 seconds on my stopwatch. You're going to tell us your whole life story in 60 seconds. Don't leave out the awesome parts, starting now.
I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I grew up in Dallas. I went to Rosemont High School. I had a wonderful music teacher named Francis Parr, who got me interested in opera and theater, which became the focus of my life ever since then. Went to Sunset High School, graduated, went to Stetson University. My dad was a traveling salesman for the John B. Stetson Hat Company and had heard that there was a small school in Florida. I was a terrible student in everything but the humanities. And I studied there. I wasn't too happy. I had a great theater department. But they had a junior year abroad program in Spain. So I went to Spain, lived there for a year, traveled all around Europe at the end of that time and saw a lot of opera and a lot of theater, knew that's really what I wanted to do, came back and applied to Yale, taught high school for a year. I've always loved teaching because of my dear friend, Miss Parr, who got me into all of this. And I loved teaching high school. I almost kept doing it, but then applied to Yale, got in and came to Yale and studied there and graduated, taught for a year at Boston University and was asked to come back to Yale as resident designer at the Yale Repertory Theater. And I've been there ever since and teaching at the Yale School of Drama. And then everything just sort of came out of that. It was like a tree. I did one show, someone saw it, someone else saw something else, and suddenly here it is 14 shows later at the Met. So
And that's just counting the Met productions. I mean, as I said in your
That's right.
introduction, your career is banana pants, and we're going to get into it. That was
Okay.
a really, really well done 60-second life story. And I just want to thank you for taking the ride. Really appreciate it.
It was fun.
Um, so Michael Yeargan, as you know, our theme today is opera by design.
Great.
And we kicked the whole day off with this question, which I am now going to pose to you. Is there a design element or a moment that you have experienced at the Met that is particularly indelible for you in a production that you were not involved in?
Well, yes, very definitely so. This has a little preface to it. Growing up in Dallas, I supered in high school with the Dallas Civic Opera, which was a very historic time because Maria Callas was there. Franco Zeffirelli, who was an unknown at the time, was there. I supered in a production where I watched him direct, and he acted everything out for the singers, and they copied what he did. He also
Huh.
designed the sets. And so when he was sort of my hero and my goal model for a long time. And when I came to the Met and I saw all of the productions that he had done, but the one that blew me away the most, and I go back and see it every time it comes back on, is Turandot. And the moment when you go from the very first scene, which is dark and in the streets of China and all Pinky Beijing and all of that, then you have the scene with Ping, Pang, and Pong. And then the whole thing opens up to this huge 90-foot deep set of the court, the imaginary court, and the audience goes crazy. And I'm always aghast at it. So whenever they revive it, I go buy a $250 ticket in the best seat in the house, like in the 15th row. And I'd love to hear the reactions of the people around me. And one year, I'm going to tell you this. I hope it cut me off if it's too much.
No, please,
But
please. This is why we're here.
the lady next to me said, I've heard this is really a spectacular production, but I don't know anything about it. I said, oh, well, you'll see. First scene started, it was all dark and gloomy and all that. She said, well, this isn't so great. I said, just wait. And so then the Ping Pang and Pong, there's only 3 people on the side. I said, just wait. Okay. And then suddenly the thing opened up and she went wham with her elbow and says, I get it. I get it. I get it. So if you haven't seen it, you have to see it.
It's
unbelievable.
It's so funny that you now will buy the best ticket in the house when you really had, as a supernumerary, as sort of an opera extra, you had the best seat in the house for that. That is so great.
Yeah.
That is so great. Michael, present for this conversation is a community of educators who are instilling the love of opera into their students. And I just would be remiss if we didn't take maybe an extended moment and talk about your Miss Parr, because I feel like your Miss Parr was ahead of her time and doing things that these teachers are now doing with, the Met Education Department and the HD Live in Schools. But will you take some time and tell us about Miss Parr?
I cannot tell you first how much admiration I have for you, all of you who are doing this in this crazy difficult time, because to me, the arts and the training that I had from Miss Parr changed my life completely and made me what I am today. She was from Hillsborough, Texas. She was educated at North Texas State University. And I started in her class in the 4th grade, which was a music class, basic elementary school music class. And the Met at that time toured every year, and there was a spring tour. They would come to Dallas and bring 4 different operas, and she would go to their office. And I remember one day we came into the room, and the room was plastered with these huge posters of these people dressed in these awfully strange looking clothes, and we didn't have any idea who they were. And she would tell us then the stories of the operas that were coming. Now she had to do a little bit of cleanup on a lot of them, because I remember the first one was La Traviata, and she was reading out. Do you remember the old Victor book of the opera? It was a little book that had all the stories, and she started reading out of it. And Violetta Valerie, a courtesan in gay Paris, is giving a party, and all the hands went up and said, Miss Parr, what's a courtesan? And she said, well, honey, they were they were party lovers. They loved to give parties and ladies of the court, and that's why they're called courtesans. And so it was like, oh, okay, great, we accepted it. And then years later, I found out there was a lot more to it than that. But La Boheme was the same way. But she always found these wonderful ways to get you engaged. I remember when Toscanini died, we came into the room and there was a big cutout of him, a cardboard cutout that she'd gotten from some record store, life size. And we all said, well, who's that, Miss Parr? And she said, well, that's Arturo Toscanini. He was one of the greatest conductors in the world, and he died last night. And she did that to it, and it fell over on its face. And we all just, were blown away by it. She would take us to the opera. She would take us to the opera. She would rent a bus. We would go see performances. She would get student tickets or something. She took us backstage. I remember at the stage door, she said, I'm taking you backstage now. You're going to hear a lot of people shouting at each other. They're going to see you be using words you've never heard before. And whatever you do when you go home, do not repeat them to your parents. But she was just full of life and joy. She remained a friend for life. And I was very, very happy that she came into my life.
I just think it's remarkable because as you describe your experiences that were sort of fostered by Ms. Parr, these teachers are doing, I mean, in some cases exactly, and in some cases things that are very similar. And when I was listening to prepare for our conversation, I was listening to a prior interview you had done, and I was like, oh my God, Ms. Parr, this is a conference of Miss Parrs. So we're really, really excited to have you here. Now, if I'm conflating stories, please correct me, but was there an activity that you did in her classroom or another classroom, which is sort of a diorama, which was very reminiscent of the set building that you would make your profession later?
She would have some kids, she would say, if you want to draw the costumes, draw pictures of the costumes. And she from the photographs, but then she said, but also if you find one of your mother's shoe boxes, make a little diorama of what you think the set might look like. And that was the first one I did. I remember it was that Traviata that she talked about, and I found pictures. You remember when Opera News was just a little magazine that was it was this big. It came out once a week during the opera season, and in there was the story of whatever opera was being broadcast, and there were pictures of the set under work light. Well, I thought I died and gone to heaven, and I would take those, and so I went and copied those and put them in this shoebox and made my own set designs, and I'm still doing it today.
Isn't that something? This is where I just really want these teachers to drink this in. We can get a little, for lack of a better term, desiccated, right? My desiccated sponges. We can get a little, because teaching really does require so much generosity of ourselves. And I want you all to drink this in, because what you are describing, Michael Yeargan, is the really life-changing impact that a teacher can have, that their creative exercises can have on a young person. It's really something.
Right. That's right.
I love it. I love it. Ms. Parr, there's something else that you said that I just want to linger on for a moment, which is you described yourself with the adjective as a student as being terrible and unhappy. And now I feel like you really are. So, hey, everybody, it gets better, because you seem like you're really in your bliss as a human being and as a creative. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, how you transformed from that terrible, unhappy student into the person that you are now?
Well, it was the theater, and I liked school, but I was a terrible student in math, and I never got trigonometry. I never understood algebra. But I could draw. I loved the art classes. I loved the English classes, history, all of those things that actually feed into set design, and without knowing that's what and everyone, people thought I was crazy. My father didn't have a clue what to do with me, because everyone else would be outside, playing baseball or something, and I'd be inside cutting out with my mother's fingernail scissors little pieces of cardboard,
cutting up her shoe boxes.
And her shoe boxes. What the hell is this? And so it was a long time. Then while I was supering, that was a huge change in my life, because I really was experiencing the real thing. And my parents loved music. They loved opera. They had actually taken me to some opera. The first one I ever saw was La Boheme, and I just thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Mm,
And so I got to know opera before I ever knew theater. And I loved the
yeah.
music. I wore the recordings out. You know, my grandmother would give me a different recording every Christmas or something. And so, and then with Miss Parr's reinforcement, it really led me down the right track. And so I
That
really just could not wait to get through that part of my life to get to do the real thing.
Michael, the Met has begun during the pandemic this sort of virtual summer camp where it's an
Oh,
opportunity for young opera lovers from around the world to come together and to learn about opera and do activities and watch the opera on demand. And I think about how in this world, in this age, how wonderful it is that they're able to find each other in the virtual space and sort of connect with each other. And I think that when I think about some of those students that participate in the virtual summer camp, I think, oh, these are our future Michael Yeargans maybe in here.
great.
These really, really, really young opera lovers who I'm excited to see
Oh, that's wonderful.
um,
I didn't
the
know
kind of
about
people they
that.
become.
That's
Oh
great.
yeah, it's a good time too. It's really, really fun. So we have some photos of your work in
Uh-oh.
action on the stage of the Met. And would you do us the honor of, can we show some of those photos to you
Sure.
and you can sort of talk us through what we're seeing and any sort of thoughts or memories you have about them?
I'd love to. That sounds
All
great.
right, Dan, let's see that first. What are we
Ah,
looking at here?
this is the very first opera I designed at the Met. It's Ariadne of Naxos. It's the second act in which, in fact, they're bringing it back this year I can't wait to see it again. I designed the set and the costumes. And
Wow.
this is Zerlina, or no, sorry, Zerbidetta over on the right, who's, the story of this opera is that the richest man in Vienna has commissioned an opera to be performed in his house, in his little theater. And it's to be put on. So the first scene, it's a brilliant satire of what it's like to do an opera, is backstage of his little theater. And the tenor is having a fit. The soprano is complaining about her costume. The composer is going crazy. And all of this is happening while the set's being put up and all this mass confusion. And the major domo comes in and says, we're going to do a commedia dell'arte play first. Then we're going to do the opera, and then there'll be fireworks. Well, as the evening goes on, he keeps changing it. So finally, the final verdict is that it's all going to happen at the same time. The curtain goes down, and then the second act of the opera is the actual performance. So you're in the middle of the opera part of an opera seria, Ariadne of Naxos, and the Commedia dell'arte troupe breaks in, and they open this constellation-filled mythological sky and a bright orange background is there. And this is Zerbinetta and I think Harlequino. And this is a very frustrated Ariadne of Naxos who's being interrupted.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And
It's a
this is
delightful production. It's just wonderful. I can't wait to see it again.
and distinct because in this you did both the set and the costumes, which if I understand correctly, isn't always your
No,
maybe your first love. Yeah.
no, I gave it up. It's too much to do. It's especially with the time constraints we have. A costume designer sees all of the costumes on stage, maybe for 2 or 3 performance rehearsals. And it's just so much information to try to absorb if you're also trying to take set notes.
Yeah.
And I think in England, the reason I did it was because the first thing I did in England was a Eugenio Yegan for the Welsh National Opera. And they insisted that you do both. And so I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing both because you really have a wonderful connection with the singers. And I love opera singers. They're wonderful people. And I couldn't, as I did it back in this country, you don't have the same kind of support that you have in Europe. And so I finally just said, look, I've got too many friends. I don't know who I'm going to have dinner with if I do everything, because you're by yourself. But now, Catherine Zuber is one of my dearest friends. She was a student of mine at Yale, and she and I work a lot together. She's a fantastic costume designer. And it just makes it much more easy to really concentrate on what you know best.
And
So
more enjoyable, it sounds like. You can have somebody to have your French onion soup with and
that's
and
right.
talk opera. That's right. All right. Dan, what do we have next? All right, what are we seeing here?
This is Barbiere di Sevilla. This is the first opera I did at the Met with Bartlett Sher, with whom I've done so much work. And this is, I can't remember which scene it is, but it's part of the mass confusion that is this opera. And this is because this was my first opera with Bart and Peter Geld. And Peter said, find a way to use the space in a different way. So we thought and we thought and we thought. And because the orchestra is so small for Barber, we decided to build a runway out around the orchestra so that we could bring the characters. You know, in Rossini, there are these big ensembles where they're commenting on everything, and then there's little intimate moments. So during the ensembles with the big comments, you could bring the principals forward and out into the house. You never heard so many protests about us, doing this. How can you dare to, you're destroying the acoustics of the Met, et cetera. The technical director at the time says, look, we're going to build a sample, we'll build a prototype, and if it works, we'll do it. And if it doesn't, we won't. Do you know, we built that sample. We had, I can't remember who came, some of the singers came out and they fell in love with it. They said they should leave it there the whole time because for some reason it's a real sweet spot in the house. And with a
Yeah.
small orchestra behind them, they loved it.
And what
So
is the name? There's a special name for that little
passerelle,
runway.
passerelle.
Passerelle. There's your SAT word for the day, teachers. Passerelle. Dan, what do we have next? What are we looking at here, Michael?
This is still Barber of Seville, and this is the Figaro, 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 that aria, when he comes on and introduces himself. We decided that he should have his own portable barber shop with him.
Yes.
So it was a big box with diagonal candy stripes on it and said Barbiere di Sevilla or something on it. And when it opened up, it was full of all of his paraphernalia for giving haircuts and barbers. And also a few women were in there, like left from the last liaison. So it was a very kind of crazy thing that we came up with to make him a more interesting character.
Love it. All right, Dan, next photo. All right, now this isn't, it looks like a, one of your
This is a model for
model. Yeah.
Lecomte, which is, it's not as well known an opera as many others. It hasn't been done that much at the Met, but we decided to do it as if it was a kind of a theater within a theater piece because it's a much more intimate. The Met is really a mammoth space. And what part of the job of the designer, or I found, is to really kind of try to find ways to bring the focus down to the singers. And with this particular one, we sort of put in a backstage of the brick of a period theater. And we used the framework of a theater in Parma from the 18th century, sorry, with all the machinations and the footlights and things and all of that brought the scale into this platform, like a Commedia dell'arte platform, where most of the action took place. So this was kind of the basic set. We had a little curtain like Brecht would use that we could bring across the stage and bring in for smaller scenes and so forth. And this is a kind of a scene in the wine cellar. Well, the next one.
Yeah, Dan, there we go. Yes, talk about it.
Well, this is one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. This was last year's, before the pandemic. This is the set for Porgy and Bess, which we did first it was a co-production between the Met and Amsterdam, the Netherlands Opera, and then the Met. It was built in the Netherlands, so it's been all over the place. It's it's a complete black cast. They are the most wonderful people. We had the best time. We became a real family doing it. Many of the singers that did it in England came to Amsterdam and then came on to America with it. And I've seen it 3 times since it came back. It's one of my favorite pieces ever.
I think for a lot of us, it really is. We started the day, Michael, by asking folks, what are those indelible moments that those moments that when we think of opera, we picture moments like this. And so, yeah, just thrilling.
But we discovered things in it too that I think, everyone says, oh, it's a slum. It's not a slum. It's a community of people who are living their lives and working. And, there's the fishmonger, the fishermen who go out and earn their, and it really holds up. It was just a fantastic experience. And I think the audience, every time I've been there, and with the choreography that Camille, devised for it, it was just fantastic to work on.
Awesome. All right, Dan, what's next?
This is the future.
The
This
future
is
is now.
this is actually the production of Rigoletto that we're doing was actually done in Germany, or a version of it was done in Germany last, no, almost 2 years ago now. And that production of it was actually, we decided it should be in the Weimar Republic. And we decided that a lot of the paintings that are in that book, Gloom and Doom, or whatever it is that she just showed you,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
was the research that we were using. And so we were looking through what is the show curtain that you'll see again at the Met, that is a collage of imagery from the Third Reich, not the Third Reich, from the Weimar Republic, that gives this kind of demonic feeling that I identify with the curse in Rigoletto, a curse of corruption, of hedonism, of the lack of morality. And it's all put into this collage that is painted on what we call a scrim, which is a curtain that seems like it's solid, but when you bring the lights up behind it, you can see through it. So this is the very opening image that you see when the music starts, and it starts with Rigoletto as this lonely man in a top hat, almost like a Charlie Chaplin character, kind of walking through and being surrounded by this curse. And then it all goes away and we go into the party. The version we're doing at the Met is a different take on the whole thing.
It really does look like, those images that Dr. Kamala Schelling were just sharing in her presentation, and Glitter and Doom. It's like it's come to life. Yeah.
It really does. And it seemed to be the right world. I mean, I thought Bart was crazy when we first started working on it. He said, well, we're doing it in Berlin, so we should do it in the Weimar Republic. I said, are you crazy? That's like asking people, like English people or German people to come to America and do, Girl of the Golden West. I said, I feel like this, but it worked out fine. It all worked out fine.
That is so neat. All right, what is this?
This is Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, the French
Yes.
version of it. And it's we did this first in Salzburg in the big Festspiel house with no set, because it was in the same theater where if you know the movie The Sound of Music, where the festival is at the end, when they escape, and it has these built-in boxes all around the auditorium. So when it went to La Scala, we had no set, so we had to devise a set, and we decided that it should be just a big town square that sits there the whole time.
Wow.
Again, because it's sort of symbolic of just this kind of filthy world that these two factions are living within. And this is the climax. This is the duel between, I think it's Tybalt and Romeo. And it was a big market scene. So there was all these things that related to the market with a huge canopy over it. In the middle of this fight, someone hits one of the cords and the canopy sort of fell down. The beautiful thing about it, I thought, was that we were then able to take that fabric that was used in the murders, and that became the bed for Romeo and Juliet. We laid it, stretched it over the platform, and then she kind of like a Lucia almost wrapped it around her, and it became her wedding dress for the wedding. And it worked its way through the whole thing. So it became more symbolic rather than realistic.
That inventiveness and that storytelling, the way that thread can carry through, that is beautiful, beautiful work. What's up next, Dan?
Oh my gosh, I haven't seen this in years. This is Tales of Hoffman.
Yeah.
Lecomte Hoffman. And this is the Antonia scene, which again, this is pure kind of dream symbolism. Hoffman is a fantastic design project because it all happens in his mind. He's telling you a story. It's all in flashback in a way. So it starts in a tavern, a very real tavern, and then he remembers these three different loves of his life. It's based I can't, Hoffman's Thought. Who wrote it? Hoffman's Thought. But anyway, he also wrote The Nutcracker. He wrote a lot of other things that were turned into ballets. So this is a very dreamlike scene where her mother sang herself to death. There's that's what this is.
I have to tell you, when we were planning this conference and we had this idea of everyone getting to like shut your eyes, and when you think of opera, what is the image in your mind? And I've got to tell you, Michael Yeargan, this was my pick, and I didn't put it together that this was your design
Oh,
until
really?
after yeah. So when I think of opera, you are the one that's in my brain.
Oh my
So
gosh. Well,
do
thank
with that
you.
what you will. Do with that what
Okay.
you will.
Okay.
So, like many folks in attendance today, you are an educator specifically. Again, you are the professor in the practice of design at the newly titled David Geffen
Good
La La
luck.
La La at Yale.
Right.
Very, very fancy, very, very fancy. Is there, you know, as educators, we are always looking for concepts or pieces of curriculum that we can bring into our own classrooms. And I'm just wondering if there is a particular assignment or concept that you explore with your young design students that you love or has yielded particularly enjoyable results, and maybe something that these teachers can borrow from.
Sure. I did teach also that I didn't get into that in that 60-minute explanation, but between the time I graduated from when I came back from Spain and finished it at Stetson, I did teach high school for a year. So I taught seventh graders, juniors, and seniors, and you had to be like a different person for each group, as you all know.
Yes.
And I mean, so the boys and girls were on both sides of the room until they're in the middle of the room. But anyway, so I know what that experience is. One of the best assignments that we discovered at the Yale School, at the David Geffen School, whatever it is, we have an assignment. We're a graduate school, and so we have an assignment where we give the son. We usually it's our teach by critique. They design. We give them an assignment. They design the set. They come in and they show it, and we look at it and we all talk about it. That's the secret to teaching design. You don't try to teach them. All the technique stuff comes out of the critique. But the one project that I love the most is we take a piece of music, and the one that we did for like 15 or 20 years was Schubert's Quintet in C, if you know that piece. The second movement, it's only about 15 minutes at the most, maybe not even that long. And we have them sit in class all together, close their eyes. We play that music and we say, now you go away. And next week, we want you to write a scenario, no words, no singing, but what this music means to you. And you have no idea how personal some of it really gets, because I think it was the last piece of music that he wrote. I may be wrong. And it just really, I think they play it at funerals a lot, and it's just amazing. Then they design the set for their scenario. And we say, and you can't use any adjectives when you write it, that it's just action. You're just a man walks across the stage, leaves fall around him, leaves turn to rain, he steps in a puddle, he exits. A woman enters from stage left, crossing and repeating the same action. A stove comes up out of the floor, she fries bacon. It just goes on. It goes, and the things that are the most mundane in contrast to that music are the most exciting. So that's a project that we really, really love to give.
That is a great
And I think it will.
assignment.
Yeah. And one year we did it with I think we found it was either a Beatles song, or it can be different music. It doesn't have to be that, but depending on what their ages are and what their interests are in, I think.
There's a concept that came up at an earlier educators conference that I have carried in my heart ever since. And I think David, who is present today, shared it, which is this idea about the thing that's so beautiful about what you just described, Michael, is there is structure to the assignment, but there's this sort of open-ended quality, so that the things you get back from the students are so much more surprising and so much more distinct than anything that you could have tried to assign. And the way that music, that visceral music, is so evocative for each individual. So good. So good.
The things that come up, that's the joy of teaching to me. I mean, it's the surprises that you get from these kids that you don't know where they've absorbed some of this, but it just comes out. And
Yeah.
I hear kids being interviewed on television or some at different time, and the intelligence level is just up to here. It's amazing how much they're learning and how much they know.
Yeah, there's a lot of absorption there.
Yeah.
Listen, Dan, I want to just check in and see if we have any educators who have questions for Michael Yeargan. I certainly have more questions, but I want to give them a little chance if they
Oh
have any
my
questions.
gosh, we do have questions, and I'll start off with just kind of a note from Denise Nisi Edwards in Jacksonville, who
Hi, Nisi.
was saying that your teacher, it was Miss Parr,
Yeah.
just reminds her of the experience she had of teaching in the 90s when she had a group of students who thought opera was lame, and they went to an opera 4 years in a row, and then by the end of the 4 years they were asking like, when's the next one? So that was
Good
very
for
sweet. So
her.
thanks for that, Nisi. And then of course I have a spectacular question from Andrew Wilson, who I'm going to spotlight to join us because
Andrew's got the good
he
questions.
does. Here we go.
Hi.
Our
Hi.
friend Andra from Philadelphia.
All right.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I love coming to these workshops. I always get so much great information out of them to take back to my students.
Great.
And so my question is, I know in learning more about the Met that they just have such an expansive stage and a space unlike any other place in the world with, I forget how many numbers of trap doors, but you said a stove just rising up. So I'm wondering, I have a two-part question, if you don't mind.
At all.
So since the Met has such an expansive stage area, is there a particular set design that was a dream for you to create because you were able to work with such an expansive space? And then on the flip side, that sometimes feel daunting?
It's yes to both. The first one was the first time when I really was allowed. Let me preface it this way. What you have basically a big rectangle, if you imagine it, that's the actual performing area, the stage area. You know, the frame is called the proscenium, and that between that proscenium, there is an equal amount of space on either side of the stage that are the side stages. So you can actually put a complete set in the middle and it'll roll, and there's room for it to roll off completely onto one side and something can come on from the other side. That's one thing. At the back of the stage, keep in mind that triangle, that rectangle, there's another stage that's exactly the same size, but it has a turntable built into it, you know, that can actually come up and down stage. So it's like one of those little puzzles that you can, you know, move the little squares around. And then, as if that weren't enough, down below, there are the stage is divided into strips that are elevators. You could take them all down and have a complete big hole in the ground, or you can have one that come up and make it level or whatever. Then, not only that, all of these elevators can come up out of the floor and fill the proscenium, and it's got a support in it like a television almost, that so you can have an open space in the middle. Now that's that, plus all of the fly lines at the top. That's the trick. That's the kit. So when I did, but you're never allowed to use all of that if you do, because it's really mainly so that the Met can perform in repertory. You know, a typical day in that opera house is in the morning. There's a rehearsal on stage. They stop at 2. They take that set away. They set up for the show that's going to happen in the evening, and they perform that night. After it's over, they strike it, take it down, and set up what's going to be on the next morning. So it's a 24-hour situation. However, the second opera I did was the previous production of Otello. And if you know Otello, it starts with a storm, the best storm ever written in operatic history, I think. Well, maybe Dvořák's better, but it starts with the storm. And we were trying to find a way. And then at the end of the storm, this huge, you know, Otello comes on stage. They're describing him out in the ocean and on his boat, and his boat is about to sink and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I decided that it should be a huge parapet, you know, and we were going to paint it shiny black so that when we lit it and put cloud projections moving over it, it looked like wet. And in these holes in it, you could see people like looking out at sea, and Iago could be featured and you could focus on him and all of that. They let me Joe Clark, who was in the technical director, said, well, then what you should do, I was going to split it and then we go into the square. He said, no, why don't we use one of the downstage elevator, the lift, take it all the way up, and on the top of it, we'll put soldiers with flags, waving like to the ship in the distance. And you see all of these things, and there'll be a big portcullis in the middle of it. And what we did was then when Otello came in, we brought in a gangplank from the side, and he came in, made his entrance, which is the Esultate, and went into the castle. After he went into the castle, then the whole thing, unexpected by the audience, just sunk down slowly into the floor as the storm ended, and you were in this vast Renaissance square. And it was one of the most exciting moments to be able to use the space that way was thrilling. What was the second question? There was another part of that question.
Oh, just with that amount of space, can it sometimes feel daunting?
Yes, and it was daunting when that whole space was first explained to me before I ever did a show. And Joe Clark had a model. We work in scale, so he had a model, and it was called a 1/4 inch model, which meant in that model, 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. So a figure is roughly, like 1.5 inches high or something like that. So he showed me the model, and he says, this is your workspace. This is your theater. And I said, could you just put a figure in there so I could get a sense of the scale of it? He put a figure into it, and I nearly wet my pants. It was like the biggest space. I said, you've got to be joking. This can't be real. Is something, are you sure this is right? And he just looked at me like, you stupid idiot. Of course it's right. And so that was, once you've conquered that Kraken, once you've done that first set in there and you get used to the space, then it's easy. It's not as daunting. It's really a fantastic place to work. And the other thing that I have to say is that the crew and the people there and everyone I've ever worked with, the Met, have been just gems. It's the greatest gift of my life that I have been able to work there 14 times. And even with with Joe Volpe and then Peter Gelb, they've all been so supportive. It's really been a thrill. So anyway.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Andra,
Yes,
such,
thank you.
such good questions. Oh my
That's a great one.
goodness. Oh, Dan, I feel like we're getting close to time. Just let me know if there's any other really, like, we would regret it if we didn't ask this question.
I honestly, I think they're being very shy, but I think it's just because it's been such a great interview.
Well, it's been so joyous, and I'm actually going to give our guests the nearly last word, which is, again, we're gathered with educators and opera lovers and people who are taking all of this back to their communities to instill a love of opera in the people. And I was wondering if you have anything that you would like to say to these folks before you leave us, Michael Yeargan.
Well, I just want to say, I wish we were all in a room in person so that we could go around and shake hands and hug each other, because I really, really, you are my heroines and heroes. I mean, I think that I care so much about the youth of this country and where this country is going. And I think that opera has been such a central part in my life, and music, not just opera, all of the arts. And the fact that you feel the same way, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. And I'm so deeply grateful to you for doing that, so that we can keep doing what we do.
Michael Yeargan, you are an absolute delight. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
I just have to say, because I don't know when we'll ever get to see each other again, Michael Yeargan. When somebody is as gifted and also as brilliant as you are and kind, it is just like the trifecta. So thank you for not only your work and all the beauty you've brought to our world, but for your kindness as well.
I have to tell you one last thing, and that is I just saw the new film of West Side Story that is designed by one of my former students, Adam Stockhausen, who also did the French Dispatch, and he works with Wes Anderson all the time. It's absolutely one of the best films I've ever seen. I was really dreading it because I thought, oh, it's not gonna be as good. You have to see it, and bring lots of handkerchiefs, because the Rita Moreno scenes will just wipe you out. It's
All right, we'll take it. We'll take it. Thank you, Michael Yeargan. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for your
everybody.
time.